Good evening, little masters, and welcome to episode 245 of the Prancing Pony podcast where, well, we're about to take the chance and show our quality, the very mediocrest.
I was going to say, don't say the very highest, because
No.
I'm pretty sure we can't talk off the cuff half as well as Faramir can.
No.
But folks, go ahead and pull up a bench in the common room. I'm Shawn Marchese, the Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the man of the West, whom you do not want to surprise in the middle of the night while he's fishing, Alan Sisto.
Thank you, Shawn. I have to say, though, that's fortunately, I guess, a rather rare combination of circumstances.
That's a good thing.
Especially, by a pool with a bunch of large, sharp rocks near a hidden cave.
And an archer with an arrow pointed at you who can't tell you from a kingfisher or a squirrel.
Who might think I'm a big black squirrel without a tail.
Right, yeah.
Oh, Anborn, we're not done with you yet, sir.
Anborn.
Well, folks, we hope you all enjoyed last week's Tolkien Reading Day special. We know we sure did. But before we get back to the text, tonight we're welcoming a few of our patrons to join us for our 18th quarterly Questions After Nightfall.
Now, for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. Here at the Prancing Pony podcast, we are reading and talking our way through Tolkien's stories of Middle-earth, a few pages at a time.
Usually. But once a quarter, we take a break from our read-through and welcome a few of our patrons to join us here in the common room and bring along some of their very best questions.
Now, we never have any idea what they're going to ask us, so as always, Alan and I are going to be answering their questions as best we can, with the resources available to us in our recording nooks.
And as with our usual Questions After Nightfall episodes, aside from any possible edits for nervous coughs or time spent flipping through pages as we look for an answer, we will be presenting this as it was recorded live. Everything you hear in this show will have been recorded during this session.
And if you'd like to get in on the next one, go check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/prancingponypod. We record these Questions After Nightfall episodes every quarter, and we invite patrons at the Elrond's honorarium tier and higher to join us.
And as we record this one on March 1st, we are saddened to say that we learned of the passing of Priscilla Tolkien yesterday, February 28th, at the age of 92.
That's right. She was the youngest of the professor's children,
That's right.
born June 28th, 1929. And like her older brother Christopher, she was very involved with her father's work all of her life. She was involved in the publication of the Tolkien family album in 1992. Since 1986, she's been the honorary vice president of the Tolkien Society, which her father actually remains president of in perpetuo.
Yep.
And she even appeared at Oxenmoot for many years, and by all accounts was an absolute joy to spend time with. So our thoughts are very much with the Tolkien family at this time.
Indeed. But it's time to get into the questions, isn't it, Shawn?
I think it is. And our first question tonight is coming to us from Arthur.
Arthur. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My question to start off tonight relates to our mutual friend Faramir, who parenthetically thank you for a few sessions back explaining the meaning of his name. I will not ask at this time whether Eowyn was ever heard to say that Arwen has the elf stone, but I've got this perfectly adequate gem myself.
I've got this sufficient jewel. That's wonderful.
Thanks, honey.
Oh, man.
What I did want to ask was that we know that presumably the Valar kept sending Faramir dream messages over and over and over again, and then they got tired of being ghosted, pardon the expression, and then sent something to Boromir, who was kind enough to RSVP. How do you think the story would have played out differently if Faramir had been the one to go to Rivendell and join the Fellowship?
Ah, yes.
Oh, wow.
That's a great question. A lot of fun to answer that one. Well, let's see. First of all, they weren't exactly ghosted. I think Faramir wanted to go, right? He talked about Boromir putting himself forward as the hardier and
the hardier. Yeah. Yeah. The elders chose Boromir. Yep.
So I would imagine that Faramir wanted to, but Denethor, knowing how Denethor feels about Faramir, was much happier to have his better son do the job, though he might not have wanted him to go. So I don't know. What do you think, Shawn?
It's very interesting. I mean, I assume he probably would have still ended up in the Fellowship, right? I think.
Oh, yeah. If he had gone in Boromir's stead to the council, he would have been one of the people representing men, along with Eric.
Yeah, exactly. And especially because they were going that way anyway, he needed to get home. Faramir probably goes with them.
The ring very much involves Minas Tirith, it being something, Isildur's Bane and all that.
Very much so.
So, yeah. He goes with. He literally takes Boromir's place in the company. So what happens then?
Let's assume that everything happens the way it happens through Moria.
Yeah. He's a competent fighter. There's no reason to think he would
Yeah.
have been killed in the battle there at the tomb.
Yeah, although, he was talking about Boromir's prowess in fighting in reference to
Mhm.
Moria. So, I don't know. He probably makes it through. Obviously, everybody in the Fellowship made it through, except for Gandalf, right? So,
Right.
it's not like we're going to think Faramir is going to fall here. But
No.
is he quite as valiant as Boromir? Probably not. I don't think Faramir even would think he would fight as well as his brother. But that's okay. He still probably makes it through.
Yeah. So there's a line in The Steward and the King. That's chapter 5 of book 6. And we're going to get there, of course, in a couple of seasons. But we actually just read this passage last week in Tolkien Reading Day, talking about his ability to fight. There's a moment where he looks at Eowyn and her loveliness amid her grief would pierce his heart. And then we read this. She looked at him and saw the grave tenderness in his eyes, and yet knew, for she was bred among men of war, that here was one whom no rider of the mark would outmatch in battle.
Okay.
I think that speaks sort of to his bearing and how he would, fulfill his role in the field. We know certainly that he did a great job against the Southrons.
I'm not saying he's not a competent fighter.
No,
I'm
of
just
course.
saying that
is he maybe not quite as valiant as Boromir?
he himself doesn't think he's as great a fighter as Boromir is.
No, but I don't think anybody thinks they're as great a fighter as Boromir thinks that Boromir is.
No, I didn't say he's not as great a fighter as Boromir thinks he is. I said Faramir doesn't think he's as good a fighter as he thinks Boromir is.
Right.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
where this
no.
is going. No, let's say they're both skilled at fighting. Shall we just settle with that? They're both around a 9. Faramir would rate himself as a 7 and Boromir would rate himself as a 10.
Right.
Faramir would also rate Boromir as a 10.
Right. But everybody in Minas Tirith said that Boromir was
Yes.
a man of prowess, and
Yes.
for that he was accounted the best man in Gondor. So let's assume that that is an objectively fair assessment, and Boromir is a better fighter than Faramir.
Okay.
My point is, he's better, but I don't think Faramir is going to run screaming and die.
Yeah, he's going to roll natural ones and stab himself in the
That's
foot.
not what I'm saying. I'm just saying he's probably not as good a fighter as Boromir, but I think he's still good enough to get out of there alive. I think it's interesting what happens when he gets to Lothlorien.
Yes. What happens in Lothlorien?
I mean, Boromir was uncomfortable the whole time he was in Lothlorien.
Mm-hmm.
Faramir, he did say he was kind of scared of it. He said
Perilous,
that he wouldn't willingly go out there. Yeah, it's perilous. He wouldn't willingly go seek out interactions with the elves.
No, he thinks it's dangerous to do so, right?
But I don't think he would have been quite as trepidatious about it as Boromir was,
Fair.
and probably would not have been quite as suspicious as Boromir was.
No, I think he actually would have found it an amazing experience. It would have been, less like Aragorn, because Aragorn, of course, had been there before, so it was familiar to him. But
Right.
he wouldn't have gone in with his defenses up.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
He wouldn't have gone in with fear or worry or concern that he'd be found out. I think Boromir
Right.
knew full well that he was already very interested in the ring.
Right. And so I don't think that Faramir would take his peril with him into Lothlorien like
Right,
Sam
as Sam
believed
says.
Boromir did.
Yeah.
And so, Sam says that it was in Lorien that he thinks Boromir first realized that he wanted the enemy's ring. Sam said, I guessed it sooner, because Sam is shrewd like that. But yeah, whatever it was that awakened in Boromir there in Lothlorien, I don't see it awakening in Faramir. A, because he wouldn't have gone in suspicious like Boromir did, and B, because I don't think he would have had that lust for the ring in his heart anyway.
I think we've talked about this before in the episodes on Faramir, where we say that both Boromir and Faramir recognized the power in Isildur's Bane, in the ring. Faramir recognizing it, not even knowing what it was, just that it's this heirloom of ancient power. But both of them recognized that it was powerful, but only Faramir recognized that it was also perilous.
Right.
Or at least only Faramir acted in a way that respected that peril. Boromir
That respected that peril.
Exactly. Boromir
Yeah.
may have been aware of that, but also didn't really care. Whereas Faramir,
Because
very
he's Boromir,
much,
and he's like, I can handle it.
right, whatever peril, whatever, I handle peril all the time.
Yeah.
Faramir describes himself as a guy who wouldn't even want this thing,
Right.
And
Right.
I wonder, would that have changed? Would he have been more Boromir-like in that sense? I don't think so, though. I don't.
I don't think so either. Because he didn't have that in his heart to begin with, and I don't
No.
think that whatever it was in Lothlorien that awakened that in Boromir, I think Lothlorien would have had a very different effect on Faramir.
I think so. I think it actually would have confirmed in Faramir what he made clear in The Window on the West, which was that the ends don't justify the means.
I think you're right.
He was very clear on that. That's a central philosophy for him. It's a central core belief. And I think that just would have cemented it.
Yeah.
So it would have prevented him from being the one to break up the fellowship. So then we get to that Spibimi moment. You know, we talked before, without Boromir's attempt to take the ring, Frodo doesn't go off on his own.
Right.
And if Frodo doesn't go off on his own and takes the ring down the other side of the Anduin, we have a whole different outcome. So let's just say, what does Iluvatar do to intervene to send Frodo if we want to go that far?
I imagine the entire fellowship saying, okay, Faramir, we're going to go to Minas Tirith with you now. And then they're all just like sort of making their way to Minas Tirith. And then suddenly a lightning bolt comes out of nowhere and strikes Faramir dead. And Manway's like, Dad, what did you do that for? He's like, well, I had to do something.
Well, yeah. That's brilliant. I love that. Oh man, they just find themselves like, wait a minute. I thought we were going to Minas Tirith. Why are we in these marshes? Why are there dead people looking at us from the ground? How did we get here?
Just no matter which way they turn, they keep ending up going towards Mordor.
Yeah, exactly.
Or what happens if they decide to split up and Faramir and Aragorn maybe go back to Minas Tirith and Legolas and Gimli, and then Frodo and the rest of the hobbits go off to Mordor together? I can't see that going very well.
No, I can't see that going well at all. No. Goodness. Arthur, I saw that you had your hand up for a follow-up. Do you want to go ahead and jump in one more time?
Yeah, so there was actually discussion about this in the chat room. And it's not so much, we were thinking it's not so much that Faramir would not spook Frodo and they would wind up going to Minas Tirith.
Mm-hmm.
Faramir would not spook Frodo. Frodo's sitting out there in the woods, hasn't gone up to Amon Hen, and all of a sudden, we have Ugluk and his boys show up.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Instead of getting Merry and Pippin, they get Frodo.
They get Frodo. That's a very good point.
Yeah, that's true. That's
a very good point. That isn't just about driving Frodo away. Without him being apart from the group, does he get captured?
That's a very good point.
Well, of course, part of the reason that the orcs were successful there is because the party was already split up. Aragorn was up at the top of the hill looking for Frodo and not able to be down there with Boromir. Legolas was off running looking for Frodo. They were split trying to find each other. The whole company had essentially disintegrated at that point. So maybe if they're all together, they're able to withstand that for a little while.
For a little while, maybe. And maybe Frodo can get away. I mean, there's still only 8 of them. I can't imagine they're going to take the orcs out.
No, I don't think so. There's too many of them long term, but I think if they can hold them off long enough for Frodo to get away.
Yeah.
Of course, I guess the question then is, what's Boromir doing if Faramir is in Boromir's stead? I have to say, I don't think that Boromir would then be in Ithilien where Faramir was. I think he's in Minas Tirith leading the regular army, leading getting it ready to fight. That instead, whoever is Faramir's number 2, and God help us, I hope it's not Anborn, whoever his number 2 is helping.
Let's assume maybe it's Mablung, but still, I don't think he's going to make the right choice.
One of those guys is probably the number 2 in command, and he's running the Rangers. So I think because he would have taken his lead from Faramir, I imagine them to be very Faramir-like. These are a group of people that follow Faramir and love him, and therefore I think they would emulate him. Boromir, on the other hand, is probably back in Minas Tirith building the primary forces that are going to be defending the city. So I don't think anything different happens there. But it is interesting because if Boromir is the captain of Ithilien, bye-bye, Frodo, you're going back to Minas Tirith.
Well, but one thing that happens very differently is they don't end up having this long conversation that ends up with Sam revealing the ring.
No, that's true. No, you're right.
So they're not going to be sitting there talking about Boromir and all of his faults and his more positive points. That's the long conversation they had that led up to Sam accidentally letting that slip.
I think Boromir just kills them on the spot if he's leading the
or even Mablung's like, we got some Haradrim coming up the road. We gotta get going.
We gotta go. We can't take prisoners. Sorry, guys.
Let's kill these things. They're probably orcs anyway.
Yeah, baby orcs.
Game over, man.
Game over, man. Baby orcs, boop, boop, doo, 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 baby orcs, doo, doo, doo. Okay, you can shoot me later.
I will.
All right. That was a fun question, though, Arthur. I really, really appreciated that one. I thought that was a lot of fun.
That was a fun question. We've been doing a lot of fun what ifs.
I'm also thinking of all the terrible names that Eowyn can call her husband when she's mad at him. Adequate anything, really.
Yeah.
Farah, whatever the words are for man. Faradane.
Faradine.
Faradine, you adequate man.
That's horrible.
That's terrible.
I feel sad.
Maybe that'll be my new name in Lothar. I'll create a new character. Faradine. Adequate man.
There you go.
Always
right. Great to have a good what if. Thank you, Arthur.
There you go. All right. Well, who do we have up next, Shawn?
Next up is Diane.
Diane, welcome. Or welcome back, I should say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I've been rereading the Silmarillion, and I'm thinking about these elves in the First Age. They are constantly wandering off and getting lost. Like Arathel gets lost, Thingol gets lost, Daeron gets lost. Now, these are supposed to be the smartest, these brilliant scientist elves. Why can't they invent the compass? And if they're the Eldar, why can't they navigate by the stars?
Ooh, that last one actually is an even better question, because I'm going to get to the first one first. When the Earth was flat before it got rounded, when Numenor was removed, would there have been a magnetic North Pole?
What's weird is we've been doing this show so long, that's exactly what I thought too.
That's just who we are, Shawn.
We just think alike now, which is scary.
It's very scary.
I'm thinking exactly the same thing. Like, well, come on, man. The world was flat. There's no magnetic north.
Is there a magnetic north? I don't know. I'm not a flat earther, so I don't actually know how they explain compasses.
I don't know how to explain that.
but it is an interesting question. But let's go with the stars, because of course, men in our the primary world were navigating by the stars long before they invented a compass.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. They were getting lost a lot.
It's a really good question.
They just look up at the stars and go, ooh, pretty, and they don't even think about the fact that they can use them for navigation. I don't know. That's a good question, but
I don't know enough about navigating based on the stars, but obviously with the Earth's rotation, the stars appear to move in the sky, right? So there must be some accounting for the movement of the stars when one is navigating by the stars. I am not a sailor. I don't know how to do this, but I've looked up at the night sky enough times to know that the stars do appear to move because of the rotation of the Earth and the Earth's changing position in its orbit around the sun and things like that. So,
right.
Where Orion is in the sky at a certain time of year is different from, 6 months later in that same year. So maybe that's a factor as well. But then I don't know, without rotation, you would think that the stars would always be in the same place. And so that it would be easier to navigate from them. So I don't know.
That's an interesting point. And there are some things in the text. There's that passage I'm thinking of with the mirror, and how everybody, whenever you'd look there, you always saw these deep, shining, glinting stars, presumably the exact same stars that were there when Durin first looked in, where they look like a crown. But that's not to say that the stars actually don't move, because we know they do, right? There's that whole scene early in the Fellowship when we read about, high in the east swung Ramireth, the netted stars, slowly above the mists, red Borgil rose, glowing like a jewel of fire. And then we talk about, as he climbed over the rim of the world, the swordsman of the sky, Menelvagor with his shining belt. So
right. And you would expect all of that. Around Earth,
of course it is. Tolkien took pains to make sure that we got the phases of the moon right and everything. So clearly it's a globe Earth, and clearly the stars are not, a fixed firmament.
So Jim has raised an interesting point in the chat here. Jim says, speaking as a sailor, thank you, Jim. Didn't realize that you were a sailor, but I'm glad you piped in here. Jim says that navigation using the stars will help you with latitude, but not longitude, which makes sense because it's longitude that the Earth is rotating against, right? So that's going to be the challenge there.
Huh. I wonder if we looked into Unfinished Tales, specifically the tale of Eldarion and Erendis, if we would see anything about the men of Numenor, at least, navigating using the stars. I know there's some talk in there about navigation and traveling by ship and, going back to Middle Earth and back to Numenor and all that. I could dig into that and take a look. But as for the elves in the First Age, I don't know why they couldn't figure that out. I'm not as worried about the compass thing, though. Doesn't strike me as a tech that they would have been particularly concerned about.
Yeah, I agree. Although you kind of want to believe that maybe Feanor figured it out, but apparently he didn't. Maybe the navigation by the stars, maybe just the distances they're covering on foot when they're wandering around Beleriand just aren't enough to really make navigating by the stars all that useful. I don't know. Again, not speaking as a sailor, but I understand they're useful for long distance navigation, but walking from one end of a forest to another.
That's true. If you're trying to get from one side of a river to another without getting tangled in the woods of Doriath, and you're talking about a distance of a few kilometers, the stars probably aren't going to help you very much.
So, yeah, I guess that's the closest thing to a definitive answer we can come up with is flat Earth. Compasses aren't going to work, and short distances, maybe navigation by the stars doesn't work. Or maybe elves are just really, really, really bad at sense of direction.
Or maybe most of them are really good and we only hear about the ones that get lost.
Maybe so.
I mean,
that could be
Tolkien didn't write everything. Lots of things happen in Middle-earth that we didn't actually hear about. So maybe we only hear about the rare ones who did get lost.
Maybe all the elves who had really good sense of direction, they didn't really get interesting stories told about them because nothing interesting ever happened to them. Because they always left Gondolin and came right back.
Exactly right.
But it's the other ones who got lost.
Fun question, Diane. Thank you for that one. Well, folks, before we get back to the questions, we want to make sure you know that when you finish listening to this episode, the talk continues all night long at the Prancing Pony Podcast.
That's right. Our wonderful listener community keeps the conversation going in all of our social media spaces, from our common room on Facebook to our Reddit community, and Twitter, and more.
Now, on Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast and be sure to follow the page and join the group for some great discussions.
And you can find us on Reddit at r/PrancingPonyPod. And we're also at Prancing Pony Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
And don't forget to check out our brand new podcast, The Rings of Power Wrap-Up. We debuted last month on February 12th, and we'll be discussing, analyzing, and speculating all about Amazon's television adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth.
We'll take deep dives into the lore behind the show, or the lore that should be behind the show. We'll talk about our favorite themes and characters, and a whole lot more. So look for the Rings of Power Wrap-Up and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And check out our social media at Rings Wrap-Up for more.
And folks, if you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us by joining the Fellowship of the Podcast. And when you do, you get a lot. You get an active Discord community, including live episode recordings, episodes without the digital ads, free merchandise, and a lot more.
A lot more, actually. You'll get live Discord hangouts, a chance to be part of our Questions After Nightfall episodes, or even join us as a guest in the North Wing. So check out patreon.com/prancingponypod to support the show and become part of the Fellowship of the Podcast.
And if you enjoy the show, you can also help us out by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And now you can leave us a rating on Spotify as well. And please, recommend us to your friends. For now, though, it's time to head back to the common room for some more questions. Shawn, who's up next?
All right. Our third question today is going to come from Marilyn.
Marilyn, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. Good evening, gentlemen. Hello, everyone. This is Marilyn from Central Maine, and here's my question. You have given us several insightful and moving discussions on hope. But recently, I've become aware of how many characters say they have no hope. A few weeks back, we heard Faramir say, "It is a long time since we had any hope."
Mm-hmm.
After Gandalf falls in Moria, Aragorn, Estelle himself, says, "We must do without hope." When Pippin the Unquenchable sees the armies of Mordor at the gate, he thinks, well, now at any rate I understand poor Denethor a little better, since die we must. Shortly after crossing into Mordor, Frodo says, "I haven't a hope left." And even Sam, a cheerful hobbit, had not needed hope as long as despair could be postponed.
Yeah.
So my question, a two-parter, is this. What is it that keeps them all going in the absence of hope? And is the absence of hope necessary in order for catastrophe to occur?
Wow.
Wow.
Well, let's start with the first part. What keeps them going in the place of hope? Okay, so yeah, there are going to be some times where characters truly don't have any hope. And I think this helped us to clarify something. I think early on we talked about the absence of hope is despair, but then we realized there is a neutral ground. There is a spot where there's no hope, but not yet despair.
Yeah.
There is a zero and a
There's
detente
a
there.
zero hope. Despair is like negative hope, right?
Right. So when, for example, though, in the Faramir line, right, Frodo asks him, "What hope have you for that city, for Minas Tirith, in your long war?" What hope have we? Said Faramir. It is long since we had any hope. Okay. Does that mean we have no hope now? It sure sounds like that at first, but then he says the sword of Elendil, if it returns indeed, may rekindle it. Okay, so now, there is no hope. But we hope for hope, right? He's hoping that maybe if the sword of Elendil returns, it may rekindle our hope.
Yeah.
Are we playing too deep into semantics there?
I think I know where you're going with it. It's, if it's long since they had any hope, they have zero hope right now.
Right.
But they think that something could change to bring hope back. And maybe that's what they hold on to.
Right. In other words, hope is not fully gone. It is not extinguished. It is like a pilot light, maybe. Like it's there, but we can't do anything with it unless we can fan the flames, rekindle that hope.
Or maybe one difference between zero hope and just straight out despair is that zero hope means, okay, well, I don't have any hope, but I know that if I wait, something may happen. Something may change. And maybe I don't really have any hope, but I also recognize that I don't see all ends. Whereas despair, right? Despair is what happens when people assume that the worst is going to happen.
Right.
Maybe that's it.
Maybe
they don't really have hope, but they are open-minded enough to know that something may change.
That hope may come.
Yeah.
That hope may come. That is a challenging question because, hope and despair, of course, is a huge, huge theme in Middle-earth. And it's an important one to get right here. What is it then that continues to fuel, I'm going to say this, what is it continues to fuel the hopes of these people who say they're hopeless?
Maybe it's that northern courage Tolkien talked about in Beowulf, the Monsters and the Critics.
Yeah. The fact that maybe something might happen.
I mean, Faramir says, the sword of Elendil, if it returns indeed, may rekindle it, but I do not think that it will do more than put off the evil day. He's already committing to putting off the evil day as long as he can.
Right.
And the sword of Elendil may do so for longer. So,
unless other help unlooked for comes, right?
Right. So even in the absence of hope, they're going to continue to fight. They're going to continue to fight against that evil day because that's what they do.
Right.
That's what valiant men do. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's that northern courage that keeps them going.
Maybe. I also like what he says right after that, unless other help unlooked for also comes, which unlooked for, right? I mean, that's the eucatastrophe right there.
Right.
The unexpected that can never be counted on to happen again. I guess that feeds into the second half of that question then. If
it does.
If it's just the absence of despair, that is not so much a flicker of hope, but the possibility of hope. The hope for hope itself keeps them going. And that only the true absence of that leads to despair and to, the Denethor type action. Then the question remains, is it necessary to reach that point for a eucatastrophe to take place? I don't know about that.
I don't know about that either. I don't think that it's necessary for characters to lose hope for the eucatastrophe to happen. If a eucatastrophe is going to happen, it's going to happen.
Well, right.
It's just that you can't count on it to happen, right? You can't look for it. You don't expect it.
It's always going to happen in a situation where it's an unexpected thing.
Yeah.
So it's going to go counter to what one would assume the natural course of events would be. If you're on the battlefield, the Pelennor Fields, and you see a fleet of ships come up and you've just finally survived this first wave of enemies, but now there comes another wave, you're thinking, that's it, we're done. And then, lo and behold, it's Aragorn.
But you might still have hope. You may not have hope for that. You may not have hope for Aragorn to suddenly hop off the ship with a whole bunch of dead people and clear out Minas Tirith.
Wait, that's the movie version now. Come on.
I know.
I was waiting for that. I'm like, well, it's, Aragorn with a whole bunch of green dead ghosts.
A whole bunch of green ghosts.
Green grinning ghosts come out to socialize.
How many Haunted Mansion references is that in the last few episodes? There's been a lot.
Well, yeah, we had There's Always My Way. I think we had at least one other. Yeah,
we did. Anyway, no, taking it back to the book, you may not hope for what happens. You may not have any reason to hope that Aragorn is suddenly going to hop off this ship.
Right. Hoping for something that seems incredibly random, really. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And that's the eucatastrophe. But you might be hoping for something else. So it's not necessarily that you have to have no hope in anything for eucatastrophe to occur. But I think by the way Tolkien defines it, for something to be a eucatastrophe, it can't be the thing that you're hoping for that actually happens.
Yeah, that's a good point. You might be hoping for an outcome that results from the eucatastrophe, right? You might still be hoping for the ultimate success of Minas Tirith against this, army of Sauron, but you're not hoping that that fleet of ships coming up actually contains, Aragorn and reinforcements from the Pelargir. Man, that is an interesting question, Marilyn. I really have to say
That is.
that's going to force us to really think things through. We may be coming back to that. That's the kind of question that I think we might revisit at different points in the series, in the episodes, when we get to those moments of hopelessness. And
I think we should, because we've talked about, I mean, look, we're always talking about hope and despair on this show, but I think,
well, yeah, I mean, it's a central theme, right? It's one of maybe, 8 or 10 themes that we talk about all the
Right.
time.
but I think that we will be talking more about hope and despair as Frodo gets closer to Mordor in this season. And we've already talked about this, like you were saying earlier, Alan, the idea that there's such a thing as no hope without despair. And
Yep.
we do mean to kind of like get some nuance in there and really have some serious discussions about this. I think it's worth talking about eucatastrophe in that too.
I think so.
I think it's going to be a really, really cool question to come back to.
I think it will. I agree. Well, I hope we have a lighter one in the next few questions. That's a really, really heavy question, and I'm going to be pondering that for a while. Who's up next?
Up next is Jim B. from Maryland.
Jim B. Welcome, sir.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing great, Jim. How are you?
We're doing well. How are you tonight?
I'm doing fine. I missed last QEN because I got a little bit distracted by something I picked up at a yard sale. It was a souvenir program from the 1938 coronation of George VI. And I found inside of there some pages that were in Professor Tolkien's handwriting. Turned out to be a lost section from the Riddles in the Dark chapter. So I'm going to have to need to talk to John Ratliff and ask him to add some amendments there, because in the passage where he's talking about the riddle of the teeth, they stamp and they champ and they stand still. Gollum is reported to have said, chestnuts, teeth, but we all has only 6. But in fact, in the earlier drafts of it, what he actually said was, oh my gosh, that joke, it's so old. Last time I heard it, the dead Martians was only sick.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, Jim. Oh, Jim. All right. Welcome back. We've missed you.
The last time I heard that, the dead marshes were only sick. Wow. That's just...
So, yeah, and I want to apologize, too, in advance for the fact that I'm making your shows longer going forward. That part that part at the end where you say names and such, it just got a little bit longer.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. That's very kind.
Okay.
Fortunately, Jim from Maryland doesn't add too much to our burden.
I mean, look, we do plenty to make our shows longer ourselves.
I was going to say that 0.01% is going to matter. I mean,
Yeah.
But thank you, Jim.
My question has to do with the palantir, palantíri, I guess. Now, Sauron has had one for about 1,000 years, and Saruman's probably had one for a good long time too. They can't seem to use it to find much useful. They use it to communicate between the two of them. Sauron uses it to kind of influence the mind of Denethor, but Denethor is able to use it to look down the river and see the black sails coming, and Aragorn, who's held onto a palantir for a hot minute, is able to also look down and see this peril approaching Gondor. Why were the palantíri not so responsive to these fairly powerful, in Sauron's case, extremely powerful people who should be expected to be able to use it to see practically anything that they'd like to see? My theory is that they work best for Númenóreans, and especially the kingly blood. So Aragorn, of course, is the one with the most right to it. Denethor, who's also got a lot of Númenórean, he's got a fair amount of right. So maybe it just works better for them. But I would like to hear your thoughts.
You got it, Jim. Well, I think actually you just hit it on the head there. That's exactly why. Aragorn is the rightful owner of that stone. Denethor, has the right to use his. The stewards were given the right to utilize the palantíri. Sauron, not so much. But also, I think maybe there's something to be said about the purpose for which they were using them. Sauron, once he got hold of the Ithil stone, his whole point was to just basically capture the mind of anybody who happened to look in their stone. I don't know that he was trying necessarily to use it to gather intelligence. Saruman might have tried. I don't know, but I don't think we have any evidence that suggests Sauron was trying to use it for anything other than communication and intimidation. Shawn, what do you think?
I think that's on track. I think it's interesting because at first when we're going down this road of, they seem to work best for the Númenóreans, my first thought was, I mean, maybe, but they were made by Feanor, as far as we know, right? So why would they only work well for the Númenóreans? Because it's not like they were made by the Númenóreans.
No.
But I think you hit the nail on the head, Alan. You talked about the fact that the Númenóreans had the authority to use them.
Yes.
So it actually tells us in the palantíri essay in Unfinished Tales that these stones were an inalienable gift to Elendil and his heirs, to whom alone they belonged by right. But this does not mean that they could only be used rightfully by one of these heirs. They could be used lawfully by anyone authorized by either the heir of Anarion or the heir of Isildur, that is, a lawful king of Gondor or Arnor. Actually, they must normally have been used by such deputies.
Right.
Each stone had its own warden, one of whose duties was to survey the stone at regular intervals. Well, it kind of goes into a little bit more detail there. But then it says, since the stewardship had become hereditary from 1998 onwards, so the authority to use or again to dispute the use of the stones was lawfully transmitted in their line and belonged therefore fully to Denethor. But, as you pointed out, since Aragorn was the heir of Elendil, he has the right to use it just by birthright.
Right, exactly. He was, the text says, the de jure rightful king of both Gondor and Arnor, and could, if he willed, for just cause, withdraw all previous grants to himself. That's would give him the right to then claim even the Orthanc stone into his own possession. Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So that must have something to do with it. It is because they were a gift to the Númenóreans, or a gift to Elendil and his line specifically.
Right.
That they have the ability to use them in a way that any interloper or, someone who's not supposed to have it couldn't do.
Couldn't use it as effectively. Right.
Right. Doesn't mean they can't use it at all, obviously, because we know that Saruman uses it and Sauron uses it, and even Pippin uses it, although he more has it used on him. But
that's true.
Still, yeah, I think that's it. I think only heirs of Elendil and their appointed deputies could use it effectively.
Yeah. Well, and then, I mentioned earlier the purpose for which it was being used. Later on in one of the footnotes to that passage, or to that essay, the palantíri and Unfinished Tales, there's a note that tells us that it was only Sauron who used a stone for the transference of his superior will, dominating the weaker surveyor, forcing him to reveal hidden thought and submit to commands. I think the closer you are to using it for its intended purpose, and the closer you are to somebody who's entitled to use it, the more likely it is to be usable.
Yeah, that makes sense. And since Denethor was using it to see things from afar, right, which is what they were actually made for.
And he had the authority to do it.
Yeah. That's why he's able to use it effectively.
He still lied about it, though, right? I mean, so he says to Gandalf, and this is actually referenced in one of the footnotes, he says to Gandalf in The Return of the King, I know already sufficient of these deeds for my own counsel against the menace of the East. And then he says, yea, for though the stones be lost, they say, still the lords of Gondor have keener sight than lesser men, and many messages come to them.
Right. Sure, Denethor.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
You see this all on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you do.
Yeah. So that's just it. I think he's using the stones in a way that's consistent with their intended use, even if he's lying to everybody about it.
He is. Absolutely. With Saruman, again, he never really had the right to the Orthanc stone. We talked about that. He was not of the line, of course. He was an Istari, so he wasn't certainly of the line of Elendil. But more than that, he came by it because he took over this place that was a watchtower for the men of Númenor, or for the men of Gondor. And he believed that, of course, that he had the power and the ability to use it. But he, because of what he was using it for, was then open to the domination of Sauron, to his threats, to his display of power. So that's why he was able to kind of get sucked into it. Yeah.
That begs the question of what's different between Saruman and Sauron, because Sauron also possesses a stone only because he took over the fortress that it was in. And I can only imagine that maybe the reason that Sauron is able to use it as effectively as he is because he is still a full Maya with more of his
as opposed
Mayan,
to an incarnate Maya.
Exactly, as opposed to one of the Istari. Yeah. Who's got these limitations placed on them by their bodily form.
Which makes you wonder whether Gandalf 2.0, who didn't have the limitations that the original generation of Istari had, might have been able to use it more effectively.
Maybe so.
I don't know.
Whatever reason he was scared to, or he didn't want to. Right?
Rightly so. I think, the stone that Sauron had really kind of bent the others to lean that way. Sauron's also significantly, more powerful in many ways, even than Saruman.
As far as we know, he was more powerful in his origin, right?
Yeah.
As far as we know.
He was an extraordinarily powerful Maya. So,
yeah.
Great question. Man, we're getting some good ones.
That was a really good one. I like that one a lot.
All right. Shawn, who's up next?
Next up is Rafa.
All right. Rafa, welcome.
Hi, guys. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Today is March 1st, and I have been buying Tolkien calendars for the last 2 years, and the image for this month, the month of March of 2022 for this year's calendar is just beautiful.
It's the kinslaying, right?
It's the kinslaying
Yeah.
at Alqualonde by Ted Nasmith. The colors are just so beautiful. And
Yeah.
yes, it's very beautiful. So I wanted to talk about Tolkien calendars, and
okay.
that's my Tolkien oddity.
Okay.
For the last 2 years, I've bought the Tolkien calendars, and I find them absolutely beautiful to spend a whole month with one of the illustrations from Alan Lee or Ted Nasmith. What are your Tolkien oddities, or would you say if you have a Tolkien oddity?
Like our little niches or the unique little bits of Tolkien that kind of make us different perhaps from other Tolkien fans.
Right.
Okay, that's a good one. I like that. Shawn, I'm going to let you go first on this one. I think I know where you're going to go, but I'm not 100% certain.
Yeah, probably surprising nobody. My oddity, I think, is anything dealing with Tolkien's linguistics.
Yeah.
Whether it's hunting down issues of Parma Eldalamberon, which are long out of print, and which are very hard to find.
Shush you. I know you're just rubbing it in. They're not that hard to find now, right? Some of them are being reprinted.
Some of them are coming back into print.
Yeah, I'm going to finally be able to get myself a Parma Eldalamberon. I mean, it won't be a first edition, right?
No, but that's okay. I mean, I understand that they're all going to be reprinted very soon.
Is it? So if I get a new copy, I can give you a shiny new one and get your original? Because it doesn't matter to you?
No, I don't think so. I'll probably just keep the old one and I'll just buy a new one that you can read. Yeah, exactly. But no, it's those things. I've actually started to collect a few weird little philological oddities that Tolkien did that aren't related to Middle Earth. So I've managed to pick up one or two little journals that he published essays in, and I'm kind of starting to get into those. So yeah, I mean, again, surprising no one, right? Because everybody knows that I love Tolkien's linguistics. So yeah, I think that's my oddity. And the more that I get excited about collecting Tolkien, we had this conversation with Jeremy Edmonds from TCG.
Yeah, back when we first started the Kingly Gifts segment.
Yeah, exactly. And he said, "Oh, well, Shawn, you're a collector too. You have your thing that you collect." And I think the more I think about it, that's the thing that I'm excited about collecting is more of that philological stuff that Tolkien has done, the Parmas. I've got all the Vinyar Tengors, thankfully. Yeah. And also, I don't know if this counts as Tolkien's linguistics, but I'm actually starting to hunt down copies of Lord of the Rings translated into other languages. So that's starting to become another thing that I'm kind of interested in. I've got
I've talked to a few people who that's the thing they collect is foreign language editions of the primary works.
Yeah, I've got a couple of French editions now because I've studied French for a long time. Not that I can actually speak any of it, so please don't ask me to, but I could probably read it well enough.
The only French I can speak is Fetcher la vache.
Exactly. Quoi? Un cadeau. Quoi? Et présent. Yeah. So, and now that I'm learning Spanish, I'm probably going to pick up a Spanish edition soon too. So
that's awesome.
That's my thing. Okay. What about you?
Well, I think surprising no one again, collecting in general. I specifically my objective. I know realistically I'll never be able to afford a first edition or first impression, The Lord of the Rings, let alone a first impression of The Hobbit. But I'm trying to collect first impression UK editions of all the other works, from Smith of Wootton Major to Roverandom to the more obscure pieces like Finn and Hengist, I think it's the fragment in the episode, all these other sort of obscure pieces that Tolkien wrote. Anything that I can afford, I would like to get first, get my hands on a first edition UK impression of all of those volumes. I have quite a few, so I do like to collect, but I do like to collect narrowly in that regard. I don't want to collect 100 different editions of The Lord of the Rings, but I do. I've probably got like 7 or 8 of the Silmarillion, 7 or 8 Lord of the Rings, 5 or 6 Hobbits, because of course I love the deluxe editions. I love signed by the artist. I mean, I don't have anything, of course, signed by Tolkien, but I do have a Children of Hurin that was signed, deluxe, super deluxe, signed by Christopher Tolkien and Alan Lee. That's one of my
That's right. Yeah.
pride and joy pieces. So, collecting in general, definitely collecting special edition books and first impressions.
Yep. That's, again, no surprise. I think we've talked enough about our little niche passions within the fandom. Yeah, it's fun because for me, I mean, you've been collecting for a while. For me, I kind of have always been interested in the linguistics. It's only within the last, maybe 10 years or so that I realized how much stuff there was out there to discover. So that's kind of cool.
I think knowing how much is out there is why I had to pick something a little narrower, right?
Yeah.
Deluxe editions, special editions, and then, first impression UK published.
Right.
Because otherwise I'm collecting everything under the sun because, I like that shiny cover. Oh, that's a pretty artwork. I'm going to go ahead and buy that cover. And,
yeah,
can't do that. Unfortunately. Yeah. I don't have big enough shelf. Actually, sadly, my shelf is full. I need a new shelf.
You need an additional Tolkien shelf now.
I do. I'm going to have to go to IKEA at some point and buy another shelf. Yep. Yeah. In fact, we mentioned Priscilla Tolkien earlier. There's an edition of the book that the Bodleian put out, Maker of Middle-earth.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a special edition of that I believe was limited to something like 600 copies. And each one of them is numbered and has a signature plate with Priscilla Tolkien's signature on it. And
That's
I have
right.
a copy of that, and it is a lovely edition. It is a breathtakingly lovely edition.
I unfortunately did not spring for that one, and I've been kicking myself ever since. But
it is stunning. I have seen them available on the secondary market for not a lot more than they sold for originally.
Really?
So they're not. Though I wonder if that will change now. But
yeah,
it is a fantastic set. There are these lovely replica printings of various items, including a letter of Father Christmas in an envelope that's been reproduced. So it looks like the actual letter.
That is super cool.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, collecting. So I have to say, though, in all fairness, looking at the illustrations, for example, the Kinsling and Alcalonde that Rafa mentioned, if I just had more room on my walls for some art, I have a feeling it would be all about some amazing Tolkien artists, because we've met so many of them at Oxenmood or at other conferences and gatherings. Tolkien 2019, we got to take a close look at Yenny Dolphin's work and who else was there?
Well, Elmanel was there.
Oh, right? That's true. Yeah.
So that's another linguistic thing, right? Where she's doing.
Of course it is, man. Her work is breathtaking too. Yeah.
Basically calligraphy of entire books, entire stories of Tolkien's work.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. And that's just gorgeous art.
I know, it really is. So if I had more room to display art, I would definitely be more into the art. I've got a lot of really neat little pieces. Some that I've bought, some that folks have sent in, and wow, I just wish I had enough wall space right now.
I've got a couple of originals that I've got framed that I'm actually in the process of migrating from a downstairs office to an upstairs office. And once I get moved, I am going to finally put up all the amazing art that I've got framed. And I have a couple of original pieces, which I'm really excited to put up.
Very cool. That was a great question, Rafa. Thank you for that. It was a lot of fun to explore that. And I would have put $100 bill down that Shawn was going to say something about word nerdery or philology. So
always.
The problem is I couldn't have found anybody to take the bet. All right, Shawn, who's next?
All right. Next up, we have James M.
James, welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening, James. And you're coming to us from Florida, is that right?
Central Florida. Yes, sir. Hello, everyone.
All right. Well, what's your question for us tonight, James?
Okay. So in the Third Age, the kingdom of Arnor came to an end in the year 1974, and Gondor's last king died in the year 2050. Now, Aragorn, the heir to the throne, was born 900 years later. Why so long? Was the fulfillment of the prophecy waiting for Sauron to return to strength, or for the birth of Aragorn? And also, was the prophecy part of the music of the Ainur?
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, let's try to answer that first one about the prophecy, the reunification of the kingdom. Why did it take so long? Was it hinging on the rise of Sauron and his eventual defeat, or was it waiting for Aragorn to be the one who would then defeat Sauron? Is our answer going to be yes?
Yeah, I think it is.
Both and?
Yeah, I think it is a little of both.
I think so. I'm not sure that I can say one is dependent on the other so much as they're both dependent on one another. I don't know. I mean, it certainly was a long time.
I do think that this is a both answer, right? Because we needed for there to be the right heir at the right time, and we needed the right sequence of events to take place for Gondor to be willing to accept that heir, right?
That's true.
And as we see, the sequence of events that leads Gondor to actually accept Aragorn as king is ultimately the destruction of Sauron.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think there is something in the appendices that suggests that they would not have accepted an heir of Elendil coming to them sooner until this sort of apocalyptic event happened, right? They basically needed to have this huge war, all this destruction, and have to kind of rebuild.
And go for 1,000 years without a king at all.
Yeah, and go for 1,000 years without a king, right? Because there was one who tried to claim the crown, right? I think you said you found that one.
Yeah, Arvedui tried to claim the crown.
Okay, so he was the last king of Arnor.
So this would have been in Third Age 1944.
And so he tried to claim the crown of Gondor, but they didn't accept the claim, right?
That's right. So when Andahar and his sons died, Arvedui, who was, like you said, the last king of the North Kingdom, the text tells us that he claimed the crown of Gondor as the direct descendant of Isildur, but also as the husband of Firiel, who's the only surviving child of Andahar. Now, that claim was rejected. The steward of Andahar played the chief part in that, and we get this text in the appendix. The Council of Gondor answered, "The crown and royalty of Gondor belongs solely to the heirs of Meneldil, son of Anarion, to whom Isildur relinquished this realm. In Gondor, this heritage is reckoned through the sons only, and we have not heard that the law is otherwise in Arnor." Now, Arvedui had his own opinion on that. He said that Elendil had 2 sons, of whom Isildur was the elder and the heir of his father. We have heard that the name of Elendil stands to this day at the head of the line of the kings of Gondor, since he was accounted the high king of all lands of the Dunedain. While Elendil still lived, the conjoint rule in the south was committed to his sons, but when Elendil fell, Isildur departed to take up the high kingship of his father and committed the rule in the south in like manner to the son of his brother. He did not relinquish his royalty in Gondor, nor intend that the realm of Elendil should be divided forever. Gondor didn't respond to that, and instead the crown was claimed by Eärnil, the captain who had won their most recent battle, and of course things didn't go very well with him.
That all makes sense, and I think it's really important that we understand that through Firiel, who was Arvedui's wife, Aragorn is descended from both Isildur and Anarion.
Oh, that's right. That's right, yeah. That probably helps, even though at the time they didn't want to, count the line through anybody but the sons, yeah.
Right. But at this point, Aragorn is able to make a claim for it because he is descended from both of them. Yeah, and I guess it's true that the other chieftains of the Dunedain before him were also descended from both lines. But
none of them tried to claim the crown.
None of them tried to claim the throne, and I don't think the conditions would have been right for any of them to do so.
Yeah, they would have failed. They would have been rejected, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Jim, you want to hop in real quick? You've got an opinion on this?
Well, just that I find the purism of the Gondorians to be kind of at odds with, let's go back to the real world and look at, say, the English kings and some of the extremely tenuous claims to the throne based on blood that some of them had. For instance, Henry Tudor, Henry VII, who started one of the greatest dynasties of English kings, was the illegitimate great-grandson of John of Gaunt and his mistress, John of Gaunt being Edward III's son. It was like he had 3 drops of royal blood somewhere in there, and yet he was able to say, "Oh, I am king by right of inheritance," mostly by right of conquest. And then you compare that to going back and saying, "Oh, it has to be an Aryan, it can't be a Isildur." You're saying we're talking 20-some generations here. Cut us a little legal slack.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but we do know that Gondor was like that, right? I'm thinking of the passage that we read in The Window in the West recently when, Boromir was questioning, well, how long does it take for a steward to become a king?
Even Denethor, who would have been perfectly fine being king.
Yeah. Even Denethor said, well, in lesser realms, maybe we'd be kings by now. But in Gondor, things aren't going to work that way.
No.
They have higher standards.
We do.
And so I think that Tolkien is trying to, in Gondor, I think he's trying to write a realm that does have higher standards than what we see in the real world.
And plus, let's be honest, that was also very self-serving from the Gondorians at that time. They did not want to accept the claim of somebody descended from Isildur, not just because he was from Isildur, but because he was of the North Kingdom, right? He had
That's a good point. Yeah.
base in Gondor. He had no political power, no support. And on the other hand, Eärnil had plenty. He just won, a big battle and, obviously had popular support.
That's a good point.
Why should he accept the claim? It wasn't so much purism as much as
there was a better claim. Eärnil had a better claim. Yeah.
Yeah. Better claim. And
or they thought
we have the power. So we're going to reject your claim and accept this one.
Yeah.
Marilyn, I'm going to take your comment and then we'll move on to the second half of that question.
Well, I'm just remembering that the Rangers had a prophecy that the sword would not be reforged until the ring was found again.
Ah, that's true. Yeah.
So that contributes to the long length of time. Now, that's not necessarily related to any individual's belief that so and so should be or could be or wouldn't be king.
That's a good point.
But certainly Anduril was a factor, right, in the legitimacy of Aragorn's claim.
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did too.
I'm sure he did. Yeah. I think it's just one of those things where all the conditions were right for Aragorn's ascendancy, and the conditions just were not there before.
I think you're right.
And frankly, it makes for a better story that way.
Yeah, I agree. So let's go ahead and answer the second part of James's question, which was the prophecy part of the music of the Ainur? That's a tricky one. We know that for elves, the music is as fate to all else, but how detailed did the music get?
Right. Did it get down to this level of detail about what was going to happen, how it was going to happen?
Are we talking about micromanaging history or are we talking about broad strokes of history, right?
Right. Yeah.
I tend to think that it probably wasn't specific to this, that it wasn't going to be, oh, this guy, Aragorn, son of Arathorn, is the one who in the music, we're going to sing this song before time exists. And in this song, we're going to name, this is the guy who will do this thing.
I tend to agree with that, but I also think that, the music is something that's ongoing, right? It was sung
that's the thing.
Before creation, and then Ea was created and the music started to become reality. But we still talk about the currents of the world and fate and free will, and that is part of the music, right? We know that humans have free will to work beyond the music.
That's right. They can affect things.
Yeah.
They can change things that
right.
elves could not.
Right. And so maybe this is a kind of an esoteric way of seeing it, but I think that when men exercised free will in such a way to set up the conditions for the prophecy to be prophesied, I think that has an effect on the music. Now, I know this is like super metaphysical.
Sure.
And I can't prove any of this, but
no,
the way I see the music, I see the music kind of changing in response to men's actions, right? Because men exercise free will, history takes a particular course based on that, and then that course is partly fated, and then that course is also partly further influenced by men's free will. But I do think it kind of becomes part of the music. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that works, that it becomes part of the music, that it's incorporated into the broad themes, incorporated into the fate of the world that Iluvatar has ordained.
Right.
Again, not that it's an incredibly specific set of circumstances, because we know just from reading the Ainulindale and from reading really all of the Silmarillion that, Iluvatar's intervention is not at the micromanagement level very often. I mean, you might say he intervened in making sure that the ring found its way to Bilbo, but it's very rare that we see evidence of Iluvatar's intervention at that level of things.
Iluvatar's intervention, true. I think the music is a little different because we talk about how you said a moment ago, like elves are governed by the music, right? They're bound by the music. And if the music covers at a micro level, whether Maiglin betrays Gondolin or marries Idril and has a baby, then it must get to the micro level, right?
Guess you're right.
It's interesting. That's a really interesting question. I mean, it's like a really metaphysical question.
Very metaphysical question. How specific, how detailed, how predictive was the music?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess before we land on an official answer, if we even bother trying to land on one, we should take a look at Ainulindale. So we get, of course, the description of the music, and we get statements like this, right? That at the end of days, the themes will then be played aright. They will take being in the moment of their utterance. All of these things. The music initially appeared to have no flaws, and then Melkor does his thing. We get the next themes. What happens when it becomes real? Let's take a look at this. But when they were come into the void, Iluvatar said to them, "Behold your music." And he showed to them a vision, giving to them sight, where before was only hearing. And they saw a new world made visible before them, and it was globed amid the void, and it was sustained therein, but was not of it. And as they looked and wondered, this world began to unfold its history, and it seemed to them that it lived and grew. That suggests to me that organic process of living and growing is pre-directed maybe, but maybe not at that micromanaged level. I don't know. Does that say anything? This doesn't, does it? It doesn't give us a clue as to what level.
No, it doesn't. But I think that if elves are bound by the music and they don't have free will beyond the music,
No.
I think it has to get down to the micro level. And isn't it the nature of what is ultimately a timeless and eternal process that it should be able to get down to the micro level?
That's true.
You know, it's not only infinite from beginning to end, but it's also infinite in the degree to which you can slice and dice a tiny portion of it and get down to the micro level.
Yeah.
I do think, as I'm seeing in the Silmarillion here, something that refutes something I said a moment ago, which was that men can exercise free will and then add to the music. As I'm looking at it in the Silmarillion and the way it's described, it does describe the music as having been sung and done, and now history is playing out the way it is, but it's not as though the music is changing in response to that. So maybe I was wrong about that.
Yeah, but the music is what the music is.
Yeah.
But men have the ability to go beyond it.
Maybe not change the music, but change the course of history.
Which would then suggest that they could change the details, but the big picture strokes are going to be according to the music.
Yeah.
This isn't easy.
It is not easy. It's not meant to be easy, right?
No, and I don't know that we have an answer on this.
Because fate and free will is one of those things that people wrestle with in the real world.
Wow.
I could come up with an answer for it that'll satisfy me, but it's not going to be from Tolkien's text. It's going to be from what I believe personally, and that's not really relevant, you know? It's really interesting, though. Really interesting.
So going back to that line about the men and what they can do, let's look at it in detail and see if there's any clue here. Therefore he willed that the hearts of men should seek beyond the world and should find no rest therein. But they should have a virtue to shape their life amid the powers and chances of the world. Okay, that suggests that there are the chances of the world. There are things that happen that are not preordained. So amid the powers and chances of the world, beyond the music of the Ainur, so they do something that's in addition to, which is as fate to all things else, and of their operation everything should be in form and deed completed, and the world fulfilled unto the last and smallest.
So they're not changing the music of the Ainur, they're adding to it.
Going beyond
They're creating something new. Of their operation, they are creating it. They are adding to it to the end, unto the last and smallest. That implies that men have the ability to influence the history of the world down to the micro level.
Mm-hmm. And yet, even though that's the case, Iluvatar then says that these two in their time shall find that all they do redounds at the end only to the glory of my work.
So at the macro level, it's still
going to be
encompassed in the music.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we wrestled and wrestled and wrestled and still don't come up with an answer.
I don't think there is one. I don't think there needs to be. I think it's a great question that it's fun to like riff like this.
It really is. And that riffing is a great way to put it because, of course, that's the whole thing, right? This was improvisation. Iluvatar gives them the score and says, here's the basic tune. Can you, jazz it up a little bit? Let's have a jam session. Right. And so then you get the things that are like harps and viols and the voices of choirs and all of this and this gorgeous description.
Men are out there being little Coltrane's and Adderleys out there, just,
I love it. Yeah,
just improv.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Man, tough one. It's not often that we're entirely stumped, but I don't think there's an answer to that. Just don't.
No, I don't think there is.
Great question, though. Fun stuff to wrestle with, James. I really appreciate the question.
I will attempt to answer it.
Wow. Okay, go ahead. All right.
I will say that if it happens by virtue of the operation of men, the operation of men's free will, I don't think it becomes part of the music. I think it becomes part of the powers and chances of the world at that point.
Okay.
I think men have the ability to influence the course of history through their free will.
Yes.
Doesn't make it part of the music. It makes it something different.
Something beyond, right? And yet at the end, it will still redound to the glory of Iluvatar's will.
Right. Yeah.
So it's all still going to all be fitting under that Spibimi umbrella.
Consistent with the music. Yeah.
Right. Well, and even when it's inconsistent, it will still redound to the glory of Iluvatar's will. Right.
Right. Because
he'll figure it out. Right.
Right.
He'll find a way. Just like what Sauron did, was not something that was in the music per se. It was Sauron's, he had choice. The elves may not, but Sauron was an Ainu, and the Ainur all had choice, which is why some fell with Morgoth or with Melkor, and some did not. So he had choices, but it still redounded to the glory of Iluvatar's will.
Yep.
Boy, great question.
Wonderful
incredibly
question.
Tough, hard to wrestle
Wonderful
with.
question.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think we've got one more before we start round 2, right?
Yes, and that one is from Rob.
Rob, welcome.
Welcome, guys. So happy to be here.
We're glad you could join us.
I have a question. I don't know if this is in your favorite letter, 131, but I know that at some point, somewhere, Tolkien said that the theme of Lord of the Rings, or what it was really about at its core, was death in the machine.
Yeah, I think that is in 131.
Fall, mortality, and the machine. Yep.
My question is, do you think that is the same theme for the Silmarillion and the rest of the legendarium? What other themes are there? You'd mentioned that there's like 8 or so themes. One of them that I keep seeing more and more, it's like the downfall of pride.
Oh yeah, we see that.
So what do you think the core themes are of the legendarium as a whole?
Oh my goodness,
Okay.
Another big question. All right, well, let's go back to letter 131 and get that quote first.
Yep.
And see what we think in terms of its applicability to the rest of the legendarium. So that is, of course, letter 131, the letter to Milton Waldman. And he has said specifically in this passage that anyway, all this stuff is mainly concerned with fall, mortality, and the machine. And with all this stuff, there's a footnote that says, it is, I suppose, fundamentally concerned with the problem of the relation of art and subcreation and primary reality. Okay. While he doesn't really describe those much, he does go into a description of each of those main 3, fall, mortality, and the machine. He says that with fall inevitably, and that motive occurs in several modes. Then he jumps on to mortality, especially as it affects art and the creative desire, which seems to have no biological function, to be apart from the satisfactions of plain ordinary life. Then he moves on. He talks about that actually for quite some time before he gets to the machine, which he also describes as magic. And by that, he means all use of external plans or devices instead of the development of the inherent inner powers or talents. He talks about the machine is our more obvious modern form, though more closely related to magic than is usually recognized.
Yep.
It's like shortcut, essentially.
Yep.
All right.
So by Tolkien's own admission, those must be the major themes of the legendarium. And he is talking about the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings, right? Because if you remember the context of letter 131, he was writing to Milton Waldman to get him interested in having Collins publish the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings together.
Yeah.
So I think those are the top level themes: fall, mortality, and the machine. And then what were the ones in the footnote, Alan? Let's see. It was art and subcreation and primary reality.
Right.
So yeah, I think in Tolkien's own words, at least according to letter 131, those are the top themes, and they take shape in various ways. Like, for example, Rob, you were just talking about the fall of pride. Well, that's fall, right? I mean, that's what Tolkien's talking about with fall, from Melkor down to Ar-Pharazôn down to Saruman. They're all kind of falls of pride. But I mean, there are other falls as well, I suppose. But that's kind of the main one he's thinking of there.
So even later in 131, he says something different. He's specifically talking about the Second Age, and he says the 3 main themes are thus the delaying elves that lingered in Middle-earth, Sauron's growth to a new Dark Lord, master and god of men, and Numenor Atlantis. So,
but how is that? But that's just fall, mortality, and the machine.
It is, isn't it? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the elves thing is mortality, right? Sauron's rise to power is the machine, and Numenor is fall.
Yeah, and he says different things at different times. There's another line, and it took me a little while to find it, but this is from letter 186, and he says, in response to somebody who had talked about the idea that power or domination is the center of his story, he says that the real theme for me is about something much more permanent and difficult, and here he hones in on one of the 3 themes that he talked about to Waldman. He says death and immortality. the mystery of the love of the world in the hearts of a race doomed to leave and seemingly lose it, the anguish in the hearts of a race doomed not to leave it until its whole evil-aroused story is complete.
So yeah, I would say that that's clearly a subset or a specific sub-theme under mortality, just as, maybe the one commandment, as Verlin Flieger calls it, and thank you, Marilyn, for finding the quote for me, love not overmuch the work of thy hands. I mean, that's very closely tied to the machine, isn't it? The domination of magic. And so I think there are probably lots of sub-themes under these three. There's probably lots of sub-themes that don't fall under these three, like hope and despair.
Yeah, it's true. When we talk about the 8 or 10 themes, we're talking about the themes that we find.
That we
They're not necessarily Tolkien's own themes, but, whether it's hope and despair or fellowship or, the sort of the Beowulfian circle of light or all these other things that we see throughout the text. That doesn't necessarily mean that Tolkien specifically identified them as themes.
Right.
I mean, just looking through the letters, it's clear it is those three, because here's another one. He says specifically and this is letter 208, he says, "It is only in reading the work myself with criticisms in mind that I become aware of the dominance of the theme of death." Well, there you go. Mortality, right? I mean, there it is. "Certainly death is not an enemy," he says. "I said or meant to say that the message was the hideous peril of confusing true immortality with limitless serial longevity, freedom from time and clinging to time." Wow.
Yeah.
Clinging to time. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, definitely the immortality is a big, big thing in his mind in terms of the thematic material of the book.
Yeah. But I think there's so many themes
that
you can come up with, right? I mean, with one's own applicability, you can find all sorts of different things that are in there.
That's exactly what we've done. I mean, we talk about fate and free will as a theme, hope and despair, the Beowulfian stuff. We look at the eucatastrophes. We look at the theme of fellowship. Well, even the sins of Melkor is sort of a theme. Even though Melkor is not in the Lord of the Rings, we still can look at the things that he did and see those as error in others, in the characters in the Third Age.
Yeah.
And point those things out and see those things cause fall, like in Denethor or in Boromir. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I wonder, this is clearly the central themes of Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion that we're talking about here. Yeah. What about something like The Hobbit? The Hobbit is kind of a different animal. And
it really is, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, I guess you get some of the machine with the ring, but
only retconned.
Right, exactly. Most of the ring material that we have in there is retconned.
Yeah. I mean, sure, it's an invisibility ring, which is kind of a machine, but it certainly is actually. I mean, it's because it's magic, and that is another word for the machine in there.
Right. But it's not like the Hobbit is overly concerned with the corrupted motive of dominating through the use of the ring.
And it's certainly not concerned with death and immortality.
Fall
a little bit. I mean, I think certainly the fall of Thorin, before his redemption.
Yeah.
We can at least talk about some of the themes that we've seen in the other works like Fellowship, Pride.
Yeah.
But I don't know that you've got a common thread really in thematic material between The Hobbit and the rest of the Legendarium, just because of the way it was written and the target audience at the time.
Yeah. And so I think what gives The Hobbit more meaning outside of just, the few hundred pages of that book is how it plays in with those other themes.
Exactly.
Right? So you start to see how the fall of Thorin echoes other falls, or you start to see how Bilbo's possessiveness about the ring, even early on, it plays out later. But the story itself on its own is concerned with other things, I suppose.
It has its own themes that are not necessarily the main themes of the rest of the Legendarium.
I mean, certainly like the idea of luck and providence, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It fits nicely into those other themes, even if on its own it doesn't treat those as thematic material.
It's consistent with the larger themes of the Legendarium, even if it kind of tends to focus on other things.
We see examples of those main themes played out in The Hobbit, even if in The Hobbit they aren't the main themes of The Hobbit.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, tough question, though.
We've had a few tough questions tonight.
Really having to put on our thinking caps. This isn't a matter of just, well, let me pause and look up the text on that and give you an actual concrete answer. We don't get to look smart tonight.
That's right. And that's good.
Yeah, that is
Keep
good.
us on our toes.
These are fun. These are good conversational questions. I hope that we'll get, a lot of community involvement in our Facebook group, on our Reddit page, in our Discord. where, we can actually have some great conversations and folks can come up with some more insights than we've had. Yeah. Well, I think we have time for 2, maybe 3 questions if they're fairly quick. And it looks like Marilyn's first up for round 2. Marilyn, what do you have for us?
Now for something completely different.
All right.
All right.
I invite you to imagine a conversation between Treebeard and Groot.
Well, it's going to be a very one-sided conversation because Treebeard is going to take forever to say anything.
I am 20 minutes later. He finishes his name. Yeah.
I think you're a very handsome rumble la la la. He's going to like all this thing. And then and that's just his way of introducing himself. And then all Groot's going to say is, I am Groot.
There you go.
So I think it would be very one-sided.
Treebeard would get frustrated very quickly.
You think Treebeard would get frustrated?
Don't you? You've already said this.
He's so hasty, right?
Don't be so quick to reveal your real name.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I guess there's probably a difference between, say, mature Groot in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie and then like baby Groot or teenage Groot that we get later on. So maybe the younger Groot would be even more impulsive. Younger Groot is going to be like Quick Beam and he's going to really annoy Treebeard.
Oh, I'm sure.
He probably just wants to sit there and play his video games. But maybe older Groot would be a little bit more on Treebeard's wavelength, but I don't think so. I think Treebeard would still get frustrated at him not saying anything but I am Groot.
You've said that before.
Exactly.
Do you have anything else to add? Yeah.
So I want to see it. I absolutely would.
We can make that happen, Shawn.
If somebody out there wants to do an edited video of it, I would love to see it.
I don't remember you in the list of creatures.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
All right.
I like it.
Well, let's see. Who did we have up next then here around 2? I think it was Arthur. Arthur, what do you have for us?
A little quick speculation.
Okay.
Looking at Book 2, Chapter 7, The Magic Birdbath of Galadriel, where Frodo sees a group of scenes that he says is a history he's become wrapped up in. And we see the sea and what looks like some ships coming up out of a storm, which we presume is Elendil. Then a wide river flowing through a populous city, a white fortress with 7 towers, then the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, and then what looks like a ship maybe sailing from the Grey Havens. I had wondered about this because I went looking and I can't find any reference to Minas Tirith having 7 towers. I found references to it having 7 circles, also to it having 7 rings, which, by the way, would explain why Gimli wanted to bring a group of dwarves in, quote-unquote, rebuild the gates. That's a different discussion. If you don't presume that this is chronological order, my headcanon wonders if we're seeing a little bit of Numenor here, which, by the way, would then put it into the Lord of the Rings and then could go into the Amazon show. Do you think speculate if there's any possible validity to this?
Well, let's take a close look at the actual text to make sure that we're reading it correctly. Shawn, I'm going to go ahead and pull this up.
Okay.
So he sees these scenes and he says that it says that Frodo in some way knew to be parts of a great history in which he'd become involved. So we get the sea, darkness fell, the sea rose and raged in a great storm. Then he saw against the sun, sinking blood red into a rack of clouds, the black outline of a tall ship with torn sails riding up out of the west. Okay, the fall of Numenor and the landing of Elendil and Isildur and Anarion. Then a wide river flowing through a populous city, so that's going to be Osgiliath. Then a white fortress with 7 towers. And then again a ship with black sails, but now it was morning again, and the water rippled with light, and a banner bearing the emblem of a white tree shone in the sun. So that's going to be Aragorn's arrival at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. Mm-hmm. Then we get a smoke as of fire and battle arose. Again, the sun went down in a burning red, faded into a gray mist, and into the mist a small ship passed away twinkling with lights. It vanished, and Frodo sighed and prepared to draw away. So yeah, as Art said, that could very well be Frodo's own ship sailing off from the Grey Havens. Okay, so we're focusing in on this line, then a white fortress with 7 towers. What are your thoughts?
I think it's meant to be Minas Tirith. I don't think it's meant to be a vision of Numenor in the past, because I think that just looking at the progression of the vision, right? He sees with torn sails coming up out of the west, as you said, that's Elendil. And then everything after that is going to be after the fall of Numenor, right? So he shouldn't be seeing Numenor at that point in the vision. if it's Numenor, he might see the tall ship sailing away from a white fortress with 7 towers. But since it happens after he sees the ship ride up out of the west, I think it's meant to be Minas Tirith, because I think it's meant to take place chronologically after the arrival of the men from Numenor.
Well, and here's the thing. We know that it has the 7 levels. We know that it has the 7 gates. There's no reason to doubt the idea that, since 7's clearly an important number, that there also may be 7 towers, and we just aren't told that explicitly anyplace else.
I mean, that could be. We know it's got one very prominent tower, the Tower of Icthelion.
What about gate towers, right? Don't gates have towers typically?
Could be.
So we could be talking about towers and gates in a context where one is equal to the other.
Yeah. I think Minas Tirith is not ruled out just because we don't know what the 7 towers are.
True.
I think it is meant to be and could still be Minas Tirith. Certainly looking at some of the images of the of Minas Tirith from the Peter Jackson movies, and there's a number of different towers there. Mm-hmm. I know obviously that's not really relevant to the book.
No.
Clearly they were thinking about, I guess what I'm thinking of, just like architecturally, you would expect a city of a certain size to have more than one tower, right?
True. Each level might have its own, or there might be several near the top. We know, of course, there's one big one at the top.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are meant to be seeing these as chronological, because other than that, if we assume that that's not Minas Tirith, then it's the only one that isn't chronological.
Yeah.
Given that, and the fact that Frodo is saying that he knew, or the narrator is telling us that Frodo knew these were parts of a great history in which he'd become involved, we're seeing now the history from the fall of Numenor all the way through to the end of the Third Age.
I have actually found a picture of Minas Tirith drawn by Tolkien himself. It's just a sketch, but it does have quite a few towers on the top.
Okay.
I don't know if it's exactly 7, and we're not really seeing it from all angles, but obviously there's the Tower of Icthelion in the middle. There's at least 2 tall towers with banners flying from them, so that's 3. There's 2 other what look like banners, so maybe those are banners flying from smaller towers, so that might get us to 5. And there's a couple of others in there, so
hard to say.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but I think Tolkien does intend for this to be Minas Tirith, and I think we just have to assume that there are 7 towers there somehow.
Keeping in mind that 7 is such a very important number to them. I mean,
exactly,
the 7 stars, the 7 circles, the 7 palantíri. I mean, well, of course, the 7 stars represent the 7 palantíri, but you get my point. 7's a very important number to them, so I wouldn't be shocked at all
if they would build it with 7 towers. Especially when they made it in 7 circles, right? But yeah, I think you're right. Obviously, the number 7 is significant to them. Yeah. We shouldn't be surprised to see them building with a lot of 7s, and it's certainly not out of the question that Minas Tirith actually did have 7 towers, even though we don't know what they all are.
They probably even had 7 7-Elevens, one on each level of the city.
Probably so.
All right. Well, we have time for one very quick one. And who's up next?
That's going to be Jim.
All right, Jim.
What brand of television is preferred by wood elves?
Oh, no. Whichever one gets people out of prisons.
Sylvania.
Oh, man. Wow.
Oh.
I just want to know, what's the deal with Amon Hen and Amon Lao? Do you think that they are found artifacts, or are they constructed by the Numenorians of old? Because they have special powers of far sight and far hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we took...
Doesn't one of them have chicken powers? I forgot. Which one was that?
Amon Hen. Well, let's see. We could talk about those sort of being Eald Anti-Uerk, talking about the Numenorians. It could be the early Gondorians. I tend to think we don't hear what the seed of hearing would give to people. We don't know how supernatural that is or how magical that is. But we do know that certainly Frodo was able to see some incredible things from the top of the seat of sight there.
Right. Amon Hen, he sees really some visions, doesn't he?
He does. He sees visions almost as though he's looking through a palantir.
Yeah, I don't know that we're going to ever come to an answer on this one. I mean, obviously we know that there were seats that were actually built on these locations, but did the locations have this power on their own?
Or did the Numenorians coming along and building these things, or the men of early Gondor, did that imbue them with special powers?
Yeah. I tend to think it's probably the latter. I think the Numenorians must have done something to that land. Maybe, I don't know what, but something in the way they built it, I think, is what we're meant to believe. I don't think we're meant to believe that it's a natural power of the land. I could be wrong.
Okay, so let's go ahead and look at that text to see if we maybe get any hints now that we know what we're looking for specifically. Soon he came out alone on the summit of Amon Hen and halted, gasping for breath. He saw as through a mist a wide, flat circle paved with mighty flags, talking about flagstones, not like flags on the ground,
right?
And surrounded with a crumbling battlement. In the middle, set upon 4 carven pillars, was a high seat reached by a stair of many steps. So then he climbs up there, and at first he could see little. He seemed to be in a world of mist in which there were only shadows. The ring was upon him. Then, here and there, the mist gave way, and he saw many visions, small and clear as if they were under his eyes upon a table and yet remote. There was no sound, only bright living images. The world seemed to have shrunk and fallen silent, so it was like he was looking through some sort of macro lens. And then it says he was sitting upon the seat of seeing, on Amon Hen, the hill of the eye of the men of Numenor. Okay. And then we get the actual visions that he sees. Everywhere he looks, he sees the signs of war, horsemen galloping on the grass, and so on. And then he felt the eye.
Mm-hmm.
Very soon it would nail him down, know just exactly where he was. It touched the other hill, then it hit Tol Brandir, and then he hears his own voice, and then he hears what could very well have been Sauron, and then he hears, thankfully, Gandalf. I don't think we get anything after that. No, we don't. So do we get anything in that description that describes where this is coming from?
I don't think so. And the only other thing I could think of is the bit that Aragorn gives us before that, when he says to Boromir, "Do you not know, Boromir, or do you choose to forget the North Stair and the high seat upon Amon Hen that were made in the days of the great kings? I at least have a mind to stand in that high place again before I decide my further course. There maybe we shall see some sign that will guide us." And then just a little bit later, he says, when they get there, he says, "Behold Tol Brandir, upon the left stands Amon Hlau, and upon the right is Amon Hen, the hills of hearing and of sight. In the days of the great kings there were high seats upon them, and watch was kept there. But it is said that no foot of man or beast has ever been set upon Tol Brandir." That's it. He doesn't say anything about why they have the power. Actually, you know what? Aragorn doesn't even suggest that they have any special power. The way he talks about them, they could just be high places where you get a good vantage point.
Yeah, that's
I don't know if Aragorn even knows anything about the supernatural visions that are possible there. Or if he does, he doesn't say anything about them. But I tend to think, I don't know, he doesn't say anything about them being special places, with a particular power. And so I think that leads me to believe that it's more something that the Numenorians building these seats sort of made possible. I don't think it's a natural feature.
I don't think it is either, because the effect only happens when he climbs the stairs and sits down in the seat. It doesn't happen when he's on top of the hill. I mean, the hill is going to have the same view.
That's true.
As the seat.
It's when he sits in the seat that he sees the vision, right?
Yeah. So I think it is the seat, and I think that's manly magic. I think it's Numenorian magia of some kind.
Must be.
Yeah, because we know that men can do magic. So, yeah. Interesting stuff.
That's an interesting one, though. Yeah.
But we are definitely running out of time, so I'm afraid to say that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony podcast. But please be sure to join us again next week when we get back to the text and reunite with our favorite Gangor companion, not you this time, Shawn, in the first part of the Forbidden Pool, you vagrant you.
I am perfectly happy to be your second favorite Gangor companion.
There you go.
But folks, you're not going to want to miss that next episode. It's going to be a great one, but be careful. Anborn is going to be taking out his bow again in that one, so everybody stand way back and don't do anything that makes you look like a kingfisher or anything like that.
Or a squirrel, a black squirrel,
or a squirrel without
a tail.
Right. Yeah, because those are a thing.
Yeah, hissing squirrel without a tail.
Right, yeah. Oh, there's such a thing. They're all over Ithilien.
Giant black hissing tailless squirrels.
Yep.
They have them in Mirkwood, boss.
But boss, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, folks, we want to take a moment to thank the team that helps make this show better. That's our research assistants, along with our Barlowman, Becca Davis, producer Jordan Rennells, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, and website guru Phil Dean.
Speaking of the website, please be sure to give us a visit there at theprancingponypodcast.com. There we have show notes, hilarious outtakes, Prancing Pony ponderings, and our online storefront where you can get all sorts of PPP merch.
And you're definitely going to want to check out our library page. You know we love the books here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, and we have provided links for you to get nearly every book we mention on the show. We do get a few pennies from the purchases you make there, so thank you.
And now we want to thank some more really important people, our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier. I'll start with Demay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, Bruce in California, Mario in Utah, Seth in Texas, B in California, Joseph in Texas, Kathy from North Carolina, and Lori from Washington.
And then we have Carlos in California, Brian from the UK, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Hal from Washington, D.C., Lise in Switzerland, Dylan in Australia, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Dorwin in Michigan, Karen in the UK, James in Florida, and Jim in Maryland. Folks, thank you all so very much for your support, and please be sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe to the show through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app, whatever it is.
That's right. But one last thing as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, your clarifications, refutations, and argumentations about any or all of our answers tonight to barliman@theprancingponypodcast.com. And if you want a chance to have your actual voice heard, you can send us audio of you asking your question by visiting podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Just make sure to please still send the question to Barliman if you don't mind.
Please
Now,
do.
Barliman's a lot more reliable lately, but we do get a lot of mail, so we'll get to you as soon as we can, and your question or comment may be featured on a future episode.
As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.